sometimes using only cool gray or neutral gray or just one shade of color when you're sketching your markers, it kind of gets a little bit boring. So what I like to do is to add 2 shades to my gray marker sketching in general, just to make it pop, and that's what I'm going to show you right now. So this is kind of a little trick, and you only need 2 extra markers to do this, but the result is going to be a lot prettier, or it's just going to look cooler basically. So let's start with an ellipse, and this is going to be an ellipsoid, so it's round and 3D, and we're going to shade this. So there's our ellipse. We don't need more than that. Gonna start as usual. Start with the let's go with the neutral gray 2. Same thing here. Same technique as we did with the plane surface. I'm going from side to side. Don't care if I miss the marks. It's not a big deal. You can always go back and fix that later if you really have to. The only thing I'm keeping in mind here is the light source, because the light source is going to define where you put markers and where you put the shading, where you put the highlights, and where you put the shadows. So in this case, my light source is coming from here. Let's do LS for light source. That means that the bottom part of this ellipsoid is going to be the darkest spots. All right, looks good for one marker. Now I'm gonna go in with one more cool gray or neutral gray. I'm probably gonna say cool gray the whole way through. Let's do neutral gray 5. And this is obviously the big step here. Actually, it wasn't. It was between 5 and 6, so this looks good. Just adding a little bit more depth to this sketch or this shape before I go into what I'm gonna show you, the 2 extra steps that I like to do. So this works fine as a shape. We all see what it is, and we see that it's an ellipsoid. It's kind of like a pill or something like that. What I like to do is to add some color to it. So I like to use a very, very light blue. In this case, this is a Touch New Mint Blue 143. And on top of that, we're gonna add some warm gray at the bottom part of this. What that does is it gives usually the blue tones from the sky. If you have a natural light, the blue tones are gonna come from the top. So what we wanna do is to add some light blue shading on top of this shape, and from the ground or the dirt or whatever it's sitting on, it's usually going to be a warmer tone. So I want to have a light warm gray at the bottom here, and I'm going to show you how that looks. That's perfect. Just to get that slight brown tone in there. It's barely noticeable, but it does make a big difference. If you can rewind this video from before or after, once I'm done, you're gonna see what I'm talking about. And then this cool part, just add some blue to this. Just 1 or 2 strokes like that. And then you can go back to the gray and just blend it in. And I still feel like this is lacking some contrast, so what I'm gonna do is actually add another layer of gray to this. So I'm gonna add, let's see, neutral gray 6, sounds good. And this is the dark one. It gets something like this. Then I can turn the paper around just to make it easier for myself. like that. And once we're happy with the marker, all the marker sketching, what I always like to do is to add some black to whatever baseline we have. And the baseline is the bottom line of, or the bottom edge of whatever object you're sketching. So the edge that's actually sitting on something. And that edge should always have a thicker line to it than any other line in your sketches. So the line weight of the baseline should always be the thickest line. It's gonna give it some weight, and it's gonna make it look like it's sitting on something and not just floating around in mid-air. And then, as always, I love to go back with a big pen just to finish up the line and clean it up, clean up the surfaces. Because as I said before, you're probably gonna go over the surface a little bit with the markers, which is totally fine. And that's what we're trying to fix right here. And then if we want to go really crazy with the reflections, we can add some white pencil to this. And we can even make a cut line right here, just for fun. Or maybe two. Like that. And then we're gonna add some white Posca pen. And all of these, all the material that I'm using is listed in one of these lessons. So if you wanna go grab them, you can do it there. So the thing here, when you're adding a white highlight, you gotta figure out where is the burn point going to be. And in this case, we have the light source coming from the top here. And we have the lightest point being kind of in the middle of this shape. And that means that obviously the burn points for these cut lines are going to be right where the lightest shade is on this shape. So I'm going to put them right about here. So we have two burn points like this. And I'm doing it on that side of the cut lines because I have the light source coming from this way, which means that any edge that's facing that way is going to have the burn points and the highlights on them. And we can make some. I like to do this as well because it adds a lot. Just add the profile of these cut lines by filling in some white right here. There we go. And final touch, I'm not done yet. I want to kind of fade these highlights out. So I'm going back to the big pen and just make them disappear more smoothly than they are right now. Kind of just defining how I want the highlight to look. So that's one of the tricks that I like to use, is to use some very, very light blue on all the surfaces that are facing up and some warm gray on the surfaces that are facing down towards whatever this object is sitting on.